This is IGN. This infuriating ordeal of intentionally awkward physics is brutal, unbelievably stupid, and downright awesome. This is your IGN review of Baby Steps by Travis Northrop. As someone who lives for the unexpected, unique, and downright weird, it only took about 5 seconds for the absolute craziness of Baby Steps to steal my heart. The spiritual successor to pain-inducing cult classics Quap and Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, who is also one of the developers here, is a similarly exasperating physics-based walking simulator that asks you to control the most unwieldy human ever created as you push yourself through increasingly arduous obstacles. The result is one of the most hilariously infuriating journeys it has ever been my pleasure to rage through. With writing that consistently cracked me up, a story with more heart than I expected, and brilliant branching paths that let you choose your own level of anguish as you explore the dreamlike world, I had a hard time staying mad at this wonderfully bizarre odyssey, even in its most maddening moments. Like just about everything in Baby Steps, the story told here is eccentric, to say the very least. You play as Nate, a 35-year-old neckbeard who has sleepwalked through his entire life and suddenly finds himself on a hiking trip he's laughably unprepared for. After inexplicably refusing to accept help from anyone as he fumbles around with so much as shoes on his feet, presumably because he avoids social interaction almost as much as he does cardio, he goes toe-to-toe with formidable environmental hazards, all while wearing a dirty, stretched-out onesie that looks like he hasn't removed it in several years. But despite being one of the most immediately unlikable characters of all time, I found this sad sack gradually growing on me in a big way, as his awkwardness peels away to reveal an isolated and depressed softie I couldn't help but root for. The goofy characters you meet along the way are oddly compelling. They are all voiced by the same handful of people delivering what I suspect is highly improvised dialogue that sorta meanders through each cutscene, which works shockingly well. Of course, as a quite literal walking simulator, you spend the vast majority of the time on your own just trying to put one foot in front of the other, which is way, way harder than it sounds. That's because instead of pressing one button to move forward, Baby Steps forces you to control each leg independently, often resulting in you face-planting into the dirt like a 4-year-old operating a broken pair of stilts. The counterintuitive magic of Baby Steps, however, is that what start off feeling like insurmountably ass-backwards controls eventually become second nature, and there's actually a ton of depth baked into Nate's awkward movements that reveals itself the longer you commit to it. Although Baby Steps can be incredibly frustrating to play and has challenges so grueling I regularly considered if I'd prefer to just tumble down a hill myself, it also deliberately makes the vast majority of these hurdles completely optional and almost always placed thoughtfully within view as you make your hike ever upwards. This meant that although I often felt devastating pain at repeated failed attempts to, for example, climb to the top of a crumbling temple in the jungle, I couldn't really get too mad at the knowledge that I voluntarily subjected myself to that torment, and could just as easily move along the main path where the level of difficulty was much more manageable. It's worth noting that none of this, from the levels themselves to the characters you meet, looks particularly good. In fact, Baby Steps is downright ugly most of the time, and has a surprising amount of pop-in for a game where all you do is walk really slowly. But with how unhinged everything else is, the lo-fi, identical trees and blurry faces kinda work with its generally gross vibe. I wasn't expecting one of my favorite games of 2025 to be about a socially awkward blob in a stained onesie with such poor motor skills that he ragdolls to the ground on the slightest of uneven surfaces, but here we are. Baby Steps is a triumphantly quirky physics game that asks you to challenge yourself, both with alluring hiking obstacles that had me screaming to the heavens, and a shockingly unconventional story, and characters that ended up feeling like family by the end. Despite centering itself around intentionally awkward controls, it has a deceptive level of depth that made me eager to master it, and I got incredibly lost in the sauce as I tried to best its most daunting challenges. If you like a good laugh, extreme difficulty, or just hate yourself, then I can't recommend Baby Steps enough. Baby Steps' IGN score? 9 out of 10. Thanks for listening to IGN. My name is Tony Jackson, and for the latest updates on Baby Steps, visit us at IGN.com.
Spoken Layer.